Good afternoon. So today's class, what we're going to do is I'm going to make hot cross buns. So I've weighed all of the raw materials there. So I have here the strong flour, I have the salt. I don't have milk powder because I'm going to use warm milk, which I've just heated in the microwave. So I've heated it so it's just hand temperature, it's nice and warm. I've got butter, I've got the mixed spice, cinnamon, ground cloves and ground ginger in here. If you only have mixed spice, just use the 8 grams of mixed spice in it. I have 20 grams of fresh yeast here, and the fresh yeast I bought in the Polish shop. You can see it here. You can buy it in 100 gram lots in Polish shops in Ireland. I have the caster sugar. I have the egg. And as I said, we're using milk instead of water because you may not have access to milk powder. And then here I have finally got the fruit. I've got sultanas, currants and mixed peel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort them out, and I'm going to put the flour in the middle of the table. Just leave all of these over to one side. So I'm just going to empty the flour into the middle of the table. And this is hand mixing, so I'm going to mix the whole thing by hand. So I'm just going to get a plastic scraper. I'm going to make a little bay, so when I put the liquid in, the liquid is going to stay within the confines of my chamber here, okay? So there's my bay in the middle. So I have got the flour and I have the mixed spice in here. So I'm going to put the sugar here. I'm going to put in the salt. So it's always a good idea when you have yeast in a recipe that you hydrate the yeast, you bloom it. So I'm just going to break the yeast up. I'm going to put it into the warm milk. And what that's going to do is it's going to help the yeast kickstart fermentation. I'm just going to twist that up. Just going to make sure all the yeast is incorporated. Leave that there to one side. So I'm going to put in the milk. Then I'm just going to put in the egg in the middle. So then with one hand, the whole idea when you hand mix is you keep one hand clean and the other hand goes into the mix. I'm holding back the fruit because that goes in at the end. And once I have the dough made, I'm going to put the butter in. So for now, I'm just going to leave those to one side. Leave them over here in the corner where you can see it. And then I'm just going to start here. I'm just mixing in the sugar with the egg and the milk. So I'm dissolving the milk and the sugar, the salt all together. And then I'm just going to start bringing that in a little bit at a time, mixing it in. If you want to do this in a bowl, you can also do it on a bowl, but I'm just doing it on the table because it's easier to see it. So you can see I'm just starting off and making a paste by bringing in flour gradually. The important thing is that you just don't breach that little dam that you've made. You can see there it's starting to thicken up now. So I'm just going to bring in a little bit, going around in a circle, just bringing in a little bit at a time and mixing that up. You can see the nice rich colour that's coming from the spices that are in this mix. So at this stage now, I can just start to bring in the rest of it. I want to just fold it over with this plastic scraper to make the dough. You can see it's starting to come together nicely. So I'm literally just turning it over on itself, getting all the flour hydrated. I'm keeping everything very much in the center of the table. So once I'm happy that it's not going to flow anywhere, I'm just going to start mixing it by hand. Just bringing it all together, and I'm going to start stretching, okay? Just stretching out the dough, developing the gluten. And the warmth of my hands is going to help this. Get the dough nice and warm. So if you have little bits of flour hanging around there, just bring them back in with your plastic scraper. All coming together nicely there. And if you have dough stuck to your hands, just use the dough itself. See the way I'm wiping my hands with the dough? The stickiness is coming off. So just to make sure I get everything off the table and off the scraper, I'm just wiping it into the dough. And then I'm just rolling the dough on the table to get a nice cohesive mix together. So now my dough is fully hydrated. I have all of the ingredients mixed in together, and I'm just going to develop it. So you can see at this stage, if I try to make a window pane, nothing is happening. So I'm literally going to stretch it out. This will take about 4 or 5 minutes. So I'm doing 1, 2, 3, lifting it up. 1, 2, 3. So I'm just pressing it away. I'm holding, and I'm pressing with the other hand. So it's just the palm of my hand, pressure and sliding. So I'm just checking the dough to see, have I a window pane yet? No, there's no window pane yet. So the dough isn't ready. So I'm just going to continue to mix it. So if you look at the dough at this stage, it's still quite rough. It isn't smooth, so it's not fully mixed yet. It's tearing, it's rough. So my dough is now mixed. Takes about maybe 10 minutes on the table. We'll just take a little bit there, we can check and see. We're getting a window pane. Okay. So at this stage I'm going to add the butter. So if your butter is a little bit warm, or sorry, a little bit cold and stiff, just soften it up with with your fingers. The heat of your hand will help. And then just pat it into the dough. And then just fold it in. You find that the dough will become even more elastic. So that same stretching action, left and right. Just shearing it to incorporate the butter into the dough. So while I'm waiting for my dough to intermediate proof, before I add the fruit, just set them to one side. So here I have the flour, oil and water mixture, which I've just beaten together with a fork to make a paste. And this paste is the crossing paste for the hot cross bun. So in order to pipe it, we're going to need a piping bag. So I have literally just cut out a small little piece of parchment paper, so it's roughly 300 long by about 250 wide. And I'm just going to fold it like this, just offset a triangle, and then I'm going to cut with a sharp knife. So we're going to make a piping bag. So to make a piping bag is pretty straightforward. So you can see I have the long end of the triangle here. So I'm literally just going to catch this. So if you turn your thumb upside down, your hand upside down, and catch the thumb, and you literally turn and just put the corner down. See here? Put the corner up at the very top, and then turn it over, and then you just bring it down into a point. Lift it here again. And then you just fold it over again. There's a piping bag. Okay, for our paste. Now it may break, so always make a second one. So we're going to do the same again. I'm just going to bring it up into the corner. You can see we already have a nice point there. I'm just going to fold that over and then just pull it up and move the point, the tip in and out, get a nice tip. And then I'm just going to fold that down. So when you have your piping bag made, just do two little tears along the edge. See, like that. And turn it down. And what that does is it prevents the bag from opening when you fill it. Okay. So I'm going to leave those. I'm not going to put the mixture into it just yet. I'll put the mixture into it just before I pipe it, because the moisture in it will soften the bag and it might burst on you when you're piping. So we're just going to leave those to one side, and we're going to add the fruit to the dough. So I've given the dough its 45 minutes bulk fermentation. So I'm just going to take it out, and I have the fruit here. So I'm literally just going to stretch it out first. Just put the fruit over it. I'm just going to press the fruit into it and then fold it over so that the fruit is inside. I'm just going to press it out again. So I don't want to put too much pressure because I don't want the fruit to bleed. But I do want the fruit to be mixed up in the dough, which it is. And once I have it mixed in properly, I want to leave the dough sit for about another 10 minutes. So the dough is sticky. If you wash the fruit the night before, you get a much more moist hot cross bun, because the washed fruit won't take the moisture from the dough. The fruit is already washed. So that's looking good. So again, I'm just going to gather it into a ball. I'm going to put it back into the bowl, cover it, I'm going to rest it for 10 minutes. So I've given the dough its 10 minutes to rest with the fruit in it, and I'm ready to scale. So I'm going to switch on my scales. I'm going to take the dough out, and we don't have to use a lot of flour, but I'm going to put a small amount of flour on the table and just show you a nice little trick. So I'm basically going to just roll the dough into a cylinder. Okay, just like that, into a cylinder. And then I'm just going to take a Scotch scraper and I'm going to cut. So I'm looking for 65 grams, so that's a little bit heavy. So I'll cut it down there. 62, so that's fine. 65. So we know roughly that's about the size, so this should be pretty close. 74, cut a little bit off. 65. There you go. So I'm just going to scale all the pieces into 65 grams. As close as I can. There's 60, add a little bit. 64. 61. There we go. So you just work through the dough. Scaling is important because if you get the weights right, you get the yield right, and they all bake at exactly the right time. They proof at the same time, and they're the same size all across the board. So there we go, 65. So this one is a little bit on the small side, so I'm just going to pick a little bit off each one. So we get 12 units. There we go. So I'll put the scale to one side. You can see I don't have flour on the floor, or should I say on the table. So I have my pieces here. The other thing I'm going to need is just a little tray. So I'm going to put this tray to one side because I'm going to give them their 10-minute recovery on this after I mold them. So you can mold them into a ball with your hand like this. So just between the palms, just roughly. Or you can roll them on the table. Nice little circular motion. And then once they're done, I'm going to cover them with a sheet of plastic and just leave them to recover for another 10 minutes. So the shaping doesn't have to be perfect to begin with. I'm doing this very rough just for now to show you. The important thing then is to protect them. So what I have here is literally a plastic bag from the grocery store, and I've just covered them so that they don't skin. So you need to leave them just like that. So the hot cross buns have been given their 15 minutes intermediate proof, and I have 12 units. So what I'm going to do now is give them a good final mold. So a really good way of doing that is I'll do it individually. We're going to flatten them out, tiny bit of flour, very little flour on the table. Flatten them out, turn it up like a Swiss roll, push it down, in like a Swiss roll again. And then using your hand like a claw, I'm just going to rotate the pastry on the table. Okay, and we just round it off, get a nice little round shape, just like that. And I have a prepared tray here that I've sprayed with a little bit of pan grease. So I'm going to do it again. Fold it in on itself, present the seam up, fold it in on itself again. This builds in body and strength into the dough.
You can do it this way if you want.
So I've allowed the egg wash to soak into the top skin of the hot cross buns, and I have them all lined up, and you can see they've proofed into each other in nice straight lines for piping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put the piping paste into this bag that I made earlier. So I have a little spatula here. I'm just going to put the paste in. So make sure you don't overfill the bag. Just put in enough. You don't really need a lot. And just push it down. So get a nice sharp scissors and cut a hole in the piping bag. You can see there, the piping paste is ready to pipe. So I'm just going to put them in a nice straight line. I'm going to pipe. Up and down. Okay, I'm just going to tuck it in at the end. I'll do the same here. So I've cut the hole in this bag a little bit thinner so I can pipe a much thinner line of hot cross bun paste. I'm just going to push down, lifting. Okay. And touching down. So then we're going to rotate and just lift. Come down. Lift. Come down. Lift. Come all the way across and down. So the first one there, the line is a little bit thick. That's much better. It gives a very nice, neat hot cross bun. You can see them there. So the hot cross buns are just out of the oven. You can still see the steam coming off them. So here's my sugar syrup solution. So it's literally just 100 grams of sugar, 100 grams of water, or you can thin that down. You can put 50 and 50, make it really small. And then you just brush the hot syrup into the hot cross buns. You can hear it sizzling away. The hot pastry dough boils off the excess water in the sugar syrup, and you end up with a really nice clear glaze on the hot cross buns. So actually it was an interesting thing that I piped with a thick tube. You can see it doesn't look as attractive as if you have a nice fine hole. So one of the things you can do is, if you have nozzles, you can actually pipe it through like a number 4 or 5 round once your paste isn't lumpy, and you get a really nice cross on the hot cross bun. So we can look underneath, you can see it's nicely baked, it's not burnt, and on the top you've got a really nice rich colour. So there you go, that's the hot cross buns. I hope you'll enjoy and have fun when you're making them. One last thing, when you bake bread and buns, if you leave them on the metal tray, they're going to condense, they're going to get all wet and soggy on the bottom. So you're better off to transfer them onto a wire. See, the wire allows an airflow to go underneath and it takes the heat away, and it'll keep the bottoms of them nice and dry. Okay, and you don't want them to get all sticky and wet and gooey. So that's very important. Put them onto a wire when you're finished baking and allow them to cool. So the air will dry the bottom of them and dry out the hot cross bun, and it won't be soggy.